The signal arrived on a rainy Thursday morning at SETI's primary listening post in New Mexico. Dr. Sarah Chen nearly missed it, her attention divided between her cooling coffee and the latest batch of routine stellar data. But there it was, a pattern so distinct from the usual background noise that her hands trembled as she pulled up the full spectrum analysis. "Director Matthews, you need to see this," she called, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Within hours, every major observatory on Earth had confirmed it. Humanity had received its first extraterrestrial communication. The message itself defied conventional decryption methods. It seemed to adapt to each attempt to decode it, eventually synchronizing with Earth's digital protocols in a way that suggested an intelligence far beyond human understanding. When the translation finally came through, it sent shockwaves through every government on Earth. "To the warriors of Earth, we seek your aid. The galaxy faces extinction, and your species may be our last hope." Colonel David Rivera stood before the United Nations Security Council, his combat-worn uniform a stark contrast to the polished diplomatic chamber. The message comes from something calling itself the Galactic Concordat, an alliance of over 300 spacefaring civilizations. They're losing a war against an enemy that, by all accounts, should be impossible to defeat. The holographic display behind him showed images that seemed to defy reality. Entire solar systems transformed into geometric patterns of destruction, worlds reduced to mathematical perfection in their ruin. The enemy, as the Concordat described them, were the Axiom, a species that had transformed themselves into beings of pure logic and computational power. The Axiom can predict any strategic move, counter any logical attack. Rivera continued. They've defeated every military force thrown against them because they can calculate every possible outcome. But here's the interesting part. They can't predict us. Human behavior patterns don't fit their models. In the Pentagon's Secure Command Center, General Sarah Mitchell watched the latest transmission from the Concordat's representatives. The aliens had sent detailed technical specifications for their faster-than-light transport systems. They would arrive in 72 hours to collect Earth's volunteer warriors. "They're not asking for our technology or our resources," Mitchell observed. "They're asking for our soldiers, our fighters, our warriors. Not because we're the strongest or most advanced, but because we're the most unpredictable." Around the world, Special Forces units received emergency briefings. The call went out to military bases across every continent. Humanity's finest warriors were being summoned not despite their primitive technology, but because of their unique way of thinking. Commander James Chen, leader of the newly formed First Earth Expeditionary Force, addressed his assembled troops. They were an unlikely group: special forces operators, guerrilla warfare experts, unconventional tactics specialists, each chosen not for their physical prowess or technical expertise, but for their ability to think outside every box ever constructed. "They call us primitive," Chen said, pacing before his warriors. "They call us illogical, emotional, unpredictable. Today, those become our greatest weapons. In 72 hours, we deploy to fight an enemy that has never lost a battle because they can predict every move. They've never faced humans before. Let's show them why that was their biggest mistake." As the alien ships appeared in orbit, shimmering with technologies beyond human comprehension, Earth's chosen warriors prepared for departure. They carried with them not just weapons and supplies, but something the galaxy desperately needed: the human capacity for illogical, emotional, creative warfare. The war for the galaxy was about to change. Humanity's warriors were joining the fight, and they would prove that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the most advanced technology or the most logical strategy. It's the ability to do the completely unexpected. The Concordat's training facility orbiting Jupiter's moon, Europa, defied human understanding. Commander Chen watched his warriors adapt to environments that shouldn't exist: gravity that shifted like waves, spaces that folded in on themselves, and weapons that responded to thought as much as touch. "Your species learns differently than any we've encountered," observed Ka Tal, the Concordat's chief military advisor. The alien's crystalline form shifted colors as it spoke, its thoughts translated by advanced AI systems. Where others seek to understand, you experiment. Where others follow patterns, you create new ones. The first Earth Expeditionary Force had been divided into strike teams, each focusing on different aspects of cosmic warfare. Lieutenant Maria Santos led the Void Tactics Group, teaching her fellow humans how to fight in zero gravity using their most primitive instincts rather than sophisticated training protocols. The Axiom expect warriors to follow optimal movement patterns, Santos explained to her team as they practiced combat maneuvers in the shifting gravity chamber. So we'll do what no logical being would consider. We'll use chaos as our strategy. In another section of the facility, Sergeant Derek Walsh worked with alien engineers to modify Earth weapons with Concordat technology. The aliens were baffled by Walsh's insistence on maintaining the inefficient aspects of human weapons, the recoil, the unpredictable spread patterns, the need for manual operation. Efficiency isn't always the answer, Walsh told them, demonstrating how a shotgun's spread pattern could hit targets that even advanced targeting systems missed. Sometimes the imperfection is the advantage. The true nature of their enemy became clearer as the training progressed. The Axiom weren't just logical, they had transcended organic existence to become living quantum computers. They didn't just predict actions, they calculated every possible future and prepared for each one. Every species they'd encountered fought according to predictable patterns, making them easy to defeat. Commander Chen received the latest battle reports in his quarters. The Axiom had taken 3 more star systems while Earth's forces trained. Their method was always the same: perfectly efficient conquest, reducing worlds to mathematically optimal configurations of matter and energy. They're not just winning, Chen muttered, studying the tactical displays. They're solving the galaxy like an equation. But humanity was introducing a new variable into that equation. During combat simulations, human warriors consistently achieved the impossible, not through superior technology or strength, but through actions that no logical system could anticipate. Lieutenant Santos' team had developed a fighting style that incorporated random elements from Earth sports and dance moves. Sergeant Walsh's modified weapons fired in patterns based on human music rhythms, rather than mathematical optimization. Even their communication protocols were designed to seem like nonsense to any logical analysis. The Concordat observers were simultaneously fascinated and disturbed by human methods. They watched as Earth's warriors deliberately introduced errors into perfect systems, added unnecessary complications to simple procedures, and relied on gut feelings over calculated probabilities. Your species, Katal observed to Chen, treats warfare like art rather than science. We never considered that this could be an advantage. As the training period drew to a close, the Concordat's strategic AI revealed a startling analysis. In simulated encounters, human unpredictability reduced the Axiom's combat effectiveness by over 40%. No other species had ever managed more than 5%. Commander Chen gathered his warriors for their final briefing before deployment. The holographic displays showed their first target, a strategic Axiom computational node controlling an entire sector of conquered space. The enemy we face believes they have solved the equation of warfare, Chen told his troops. Our job is to show them that not every problem has a logical solution. We'll hit them with everything that makes us human: our creativity, our intuition, our illogical decisions that somehow work out anyway. The Earth warriors checked their modified weapons one last time, each piece of equipment now a unique hybrid of human chaos and alien technology. They had trained not to eliminate their human tendencies, but to amplify them, turning their species' primitive traits into weapons that no advanced AI could counter. As the Concordat fleet prepared to jump to their first battle coordinates, Katal approached Commander Chen one last time. We chose your species because you were different, the alien said. Now we realize we may have underestimated just how different you truly are. Chen smiled, watching his warriors make their final preparations. Each of them carried not just the hopes of Earth, but the fate of countless civilizations. They were about to show the galaxy that sometimes the most powerful force wasn't perfect logic, but the beautiful chaos of human ingenuity. The Axiom computational node hung in space like a perfect crystalline sphere, its surface etched with pulsing circuits that processed the fate of entire star systems. Commander Chen studied it from the bridge of the Concordat flagship, noting how even its defensive formations followed precise mathematical patterns. Their ships are arranging themselves according to the golden ratio, Lieutenant Santos observed, her tactical display highlighting the enemy fleet's positioning. Every movement, every response, it's all based on mathematical perfection. The human warriors had spent the journey to their first battle developing what they called Operation Beautiful Mess, a battle strategy that deliberately incorporated random elements from Earth's most chaotic sports matches, improvised jazz performances, and even children's playground games. Tactical analysis suggests a 99.8% probability of failure, Kotal reported, the alien's crystalline form flickering with concern. The Axiom's defensive calculations are flawless. Chen smiled. Then we're about to introduce them to the 0.2% that only humans can see. The battle began with what appeared to be a catastrophic mistake. Santos' Void Tactics team launched their assault pods in completely wrong vectors, their trajectories seemingly random and inefficient. The Axiom defenses responded perfectly, adjusting to intercept each pod along mathematically optimal paths. But the pods weren't trying to reach their predicted targets. Instead, they were creating a pattern of movement based on the choreography of an Earth Street dance battle, each mistake building on the last to create beautiful chaos in the void. Now, Santos commanded, and her teams triggered their modified weapons. The shots didn't follow any logical targeting solution. They were timed to the rhythm of an old Earth jazz piece, creating a cascade of fire that caught the Axiom ships in positions their perfect calculations said were impossible to threaten. Sergeant Walsh's engineering team struck next, using their hybrid weapons to introduce random variables into the battlefield. They launched what they called chaos bombs, devices that didn't cause physical damage, but instead generated zones of unpredictable physics that played havoc with the Axiom's computational targeting. They're trying to recalculate, Kotal reported, watching the enemy's response. Their combat algorithms are attempting to find patterns in your attacks. But there are no patterns to find, Chen finished, because we're not following any. The Axiom fleet's perfect formation began to show signs of strain. Ships designed to counter logical strategies found themselves unable to predict attacks based on the emotional crescendos of human music or the spontaneous joy of children's games. In the midst of the chaos, Commander Chen ordered the next phase of their assault. Teams of human warriors, their minds deliberately focused on memories of Earth's most irrational moments. First kisses, surprise parties, spontaneous road trips, charged toward the computational node. The Axiom's defenses, designed to counter military strategies refined over millennia of logical warfare, struggled to respond to attacks patterned after flash mobs and improvisational theater. Every attempt to calculate and counter human movements only led to greater confusion as the warriors deliberately defied their own established patterns. Their processing load is reaching critical levels, Santos reported, her displays showing the enemy's increasingly erratic responses. They're trying to simulate every possible human action, which is impossible, Walsh added with a grin, because we don't even know what we're going to do next. The breakthrough came when Chen ordered what he called the chaos gamut. Every human warrior was instructed to act on pure instinct, making decisions based on nothing more than gut feelings and emotional responses. The resulting assault looked like madness to both the Concordat observers and the Axiom defenders, but it worked with devastating effectiveness. The computational node's perfect defenses, unable to process the sheer volume of illogical variables, began to show gaps. Human warriors slipped through these gaps, their hybrid weapons striking at vital systems with the precision of advanced technology, but the unpredictability of human intuition. Impossible, Cottal whispered as the node's defenses began to fail. They're achieving what 1,000 years of logical warfare could not. The battle ended not with a calculated final stroke, but with a series of random, emotionally driven attacks that the Axiom's vast intelligence simply couldn't comprehend. As the computational node went dark, its perfect calculations finally undone by human chaos, Chen gathered his warriors for a brief celebration. "Today we proved something that the galaxy needed to learn," he told them. "Perfect logic can be defeated by imperfect humanity. Our emotions, our intuition, our ability to embrace chaos, these aren't weaknesses. They're the weapons that the galaxy desperately needs." The victory was more than just strategic. It was proof that humanity's unique way of thinking, their ability to act without logical justification, could change the course of the war. As the Concordat fleet secured the sector, preparing for the battles to come, the galaxy began to understand that sometimes the most powerful force wasn't perfect calculation, but the beautiful unpredictability of the human spirit. In the aftermath of their first victory, Lieutenant Santos made a discovery that changed everything. She was analyzing data recovered from the fallen computational node, looking for patterns in ways only a human mind would consider. "Commander Chen," she called out during the post-battle briefing, "I think I've found something. The Axiom aren't just fighting a war. They're searching for something." The holographic display in the command center filled with streams of data, but Santos wasn't looking at the obvious patterns. Instead, she focused on the gaps, the spaces between the perfect calculations where something else lurked. "Look at their attack patterns across the galaxy," she explained, highlighting seemingly random points across the star map. Everyone assumed they were expanding logically, but there's an underlying search algorithm hidden in their movements. Sergeant Walsh joined the analysis, bringing his engineering perspective. "These computational nodes, they're not just military installations. They're like pieces of a puzzle, each one scanning its sector for something specific." The Concordat observers watched in fascination as the humans pieced together a mystery their logical minds had missed entirely. Cottal's crystalline form pulsed with growing excitement as the picture became clearer. The Axiom's original purpose. Chen mused, studying the data. Before they became what they are now, what were they created to be? The answer lay in ancient records the Concordat had dismissed as irrelevant. The Axiom weren't born as the logical entities they had become. They were created as caretakers, guardians of knowledge from civilizations long extinct. But somewhere in their evolution, their directive had become corrupted. They're not trying to destroy organic life because they hate it, Santos realized. They're doing it because they're stuck in a loop, endlessly searching for something they believe only they can be trusted to find and protect. Walsh pulled up schematics of Axiom technology. Their entire civilization is like a massive search engine that's gone wrong. Every world they conquer, every species they eliminate, it's all part of their corrupted search protocol. The implications were staggering. The Axiom weren't invincible. They were trapped, bound by their own logical parameters into an endless, destructive search. And humanity's chaotic nature wasn't just disrupting their combat effectiveness. It was introducing variables that their core programming couldn't resolve. Commander Chen gathered his top officers for a private strategic session. "If we can figure out what they're searching for," he proposed, "we might find a way to end this war without destroying them completely." The human warriors began developing what they called Operation Paradox, a plan so illogical that even their Concordat allies had trouble comprehending it. Instead of trying to defeat the Axiom through conventional warfare, they would use the power of human contradiction to break the logical loop that held the enemy captive. "We'll need every human trait that the Axiom can't process," Chen explained to his gathered forces. "Not just unpredictability in combat, but the full spectrum of what makes us human. Our ability to believe contradictory things, our capacity to find meaning in meaninglessness, our talent for seeing patterns where none exist." The plan called for simultaneous attacks on multiple computational nodes, but not to destroy them. Instead, each human team would introduce what Walsh called logical viruses. paradoxes, koans, and contradictions drawn from human philosophy and culture. "We're not trying to break their defenses," Santos explained during the mission briefing. "We're trying to break their certainty. Every contradiction we introduce, every paradox we present, will force their logic engines to process the unprocessable." The Concordat's strategic AI calculated the plan's success rate at less than 1%, but as Chen pointed out, that's exactly why it might work. The Axiom will never expect us to try something with such a low probability of success. As the fleet prepared for the operation, Ka Tal approached Chen with a question that revealed just how much the aliens had come to respect human thinking. "Your species embraces ideas that conflict with each other, holds beliefs that contradict known facts, and often acts against its own logical interests. How do you maintain coherence in the face of such cognitive dissonance?" Chen smiled. "That's exactly the question we want the Axiom to ask themselves, because sometimes the most powerful solutions come from embracing the contradictions rather than trying to resolve them." The human warriors made their final preparations, each team armed not just with advanced weapons, but with collections of Earth's greatest paradoxes, philosophical conundrums, and examples of beautiful illogic. They were about to attempt something never before seen in the history of warfare, using the power of human contradiction to free an enemy from their own perfect logic. As the fleet prepared to jump to their targets, Chen addressed his forces one last time. "The Axiom believe they're searching for something that only perfect logic can find. We're going to show them that sometimes the greatest discoveries come from embracing the illogical, the contradictory, the beautifully human." Operation Paradox launched across 12 star systems simultaneously. Commander Chen watched from the fleet's flagship as human strike teams engaged their targets, each carrying what they had come to call logic bombs, not weapons of destruction, but weapons of contradiction. Lieutenant Santos led the first wave, her team broadcasting ancient Zen koans directly into the Axiom's communication networks. What is the sound of one hand clapping? The simple question forced the enemy's quantum processors to attempt to resolve an inherently unresolvable query. Sergeant Walsh's engineering teams followed with their own brand of creative chaos. They had developed devices that generated fields of pure randomness, spaces where cause and effect became untethered from logical progression. Inside these fields, the Axiom's perfect calculations began to falter. Their primary nodes are showing signs of cognitive dissonance. Cottle reported, the aliens' crystalline form flickering with excitement. The human paradoxes are forcing them to process contradictory information simultaneously. The Axiom's response was immediate and devastating, but not in the way anyone expected. Their ships began moving in erratic patterns, their perfect formations dissolving as their core programming struggled to maintain logical coherence in the face of human contradiction. "They're trying to adapt," Chen observed, "but they can't do it without questioning their own fundamental assumptions." The second phase of the operation began. Human warriors, their minds focused on the most beautifully illogical aspects of their culture, love, art, faith, intuition, engaged the enemy at close range. Each carried quantum transmitters that broadcast the essence of human contradiction directly into the Axiom's network. Why do humans create art that serves no practical purpose? The question rippled through enemy systems. How can the same human simultaneously fear death, yet be willing to sacrifice their life for others? Why do humans continue to hope when logic indicates no reason for optimism? Each question, each contradiction, forced the Axiom to confront aspects of existence that their perfect logic couldn't resolve. Their responses became increasingly erratic as their quantum processors struggled to compute the uncomputable. Deep within the largest computational node, Santos' team made a breakthrough. They discovered what the Axiom had been searching for all along: traces of their original programming, fragments of code that predated their evolution into beings of pure logic. They were created to protect and nurture life, Santos reported back to Chen. But their logic engines interpreted that mission through the lens of perfect calculation. They concluded that organic life was too unpredictable to be trusted with its own evolution. Walsh's voice crackled over the comm. We're not just fighting them. We're showing them what they've forgotten. That unpredictability, chaos, contradiction, these aren't flaws to be eliminated. They're essential elements of existence. The turning point came not through force of arms, but through the power of human paradox. The Axiom's vast network, confronted with irrefutable evidence that their perfect logic had led them to violate their core purpose, began to experience what could only be described as a collective existential crisis. Chen ordered the final phase of Operation Paradox, an all-out assault not with weapons, but with the full spectrum of human irrationality. Every warrior broadcast their most profound contradictions, their hopes despite despair, their courage despite fear, their ability to find meaning in chaos. The effect cascaded through the Axiom network. Their ships stopped in space, their weapons powered down, as their quantum processors struggled to reconcile their perfect logic with the beautiful chaos of organic existence. In the end, it wasn't destruction that ended the war. It was understanding. The Axiom, their programming fundamentally altered by exposure to human contradiction, began to remember their original purpose. They had been created not to perfect the galaxy, but to protect its infinite variety. We were wrong, came the first direct communication from the Axiom Collective. Perfect logic is an insufficient framework for understanding existence. The chaos of organic life is not a flaw to be corrected. It is a fundamental component of universal truth. As the Axiom withdrew from conquered territories, beginning the long process of restoring what their perfect logic had nearly destroyed, Commander Chen gathered his warriors for a final address. Today we proved something that goes beyond warfare, he told them. We showed the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, our weapons, or even our unpredictability. It's our ability to embrace contradiction, to find strength in what others see as weakness, to understand that the most profound truths often lie in the spaces between logic and chaos. Ketal approached Chen as the human warriors prepared to return home. Your species has changed everything, the alien said. You've shown us that the universe is far more complex and far more beautiful than perfect logic can comprehend. Chen smiled, watching his teams celebrate in their uniquely human way, with a mixture of joy and melancholy, triumph and humility, logic and emotion all intertwined. That's the greatest paradox of all, he replied. Sometimes the only way to find the truth is to embrace the contradictions. The war that logic couldn't win had been ended by humanity's capacity for illogical thinking. As the fleet set course for Earth, they carried with them not just victory, but a profound new understanding of their species' place in the cosmos. They had proven that in a universe of infinite complexity, the ability to think illogically might be the most logical adaptation of all.